China plays the race card and pulls visas from Japan and South Korea. Ancient technology grounds thousands of flights in the U.S. Southeast Asian eateries learn that local is better. And Japan and Britain up the ante against Chinese aggression. How can all that help you improve your English? Find out on English News We're Talking About. Hey there, I'm so glad you're here joining me for English News We're Talking About. My name is Dennis Wilborn, and I'm the founder of All About English. I'm an entrepreneur, an English coach, and a former sailor, and I'm passionate about helping people like you learn and improve their English skills. So if you're looking for a fun and engaging way to stay on top of the current events and improve your English at the same time, then you are in the right place. Every Monday and Friday, I cover some of the most interesting and relevant news stories that are happening around the world and mostly in the region of Asia. So I'm going to provide you with a summary of some basic news stories, share the vocabulary, share some idiom and expressions that can help you improve your English. And I'll also be asking thought-provoking questions along the way. And I encourage you to join in the discussion, engage in the comments, and join the community. Grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Today is, what is today? Today is Friday. Oh my gosh, it's Friday the 13th. Does anybody have any idea why that's even a big deal in the US and in Britain? Let me know in the comments. Why is Friday the 13th even a big deal? Here we are, 2023, Friday the 13th. And today, I've got some interesting news updates to share with you. I'm also excited to announce that I am changing the format of the show just a bit. Instead of focusing on one article, I'll be covering multiple articles and having a broader discussion about current events. That way, you can have an opportunity to see how I operate. You hear about different news stories, and if you check the description, you can see links to all the stories that I'll be talking about today. I encourage you to go and read it, check it out for yourself, and then come back because I'm going to be asking some thought-provoking questions in order to encourage you to engage and join in with the discussion. So if you want to join me, you can comment here in the comments down below, or join my new community that I'm starting on Telegram. Just check the description in the bottom for links. Now, the first article up today is going to be called China Stops Visas for Japan, South Korea over COVID rules. Now, as we go through the articles, I'll be pointing out some vocabulary and idioms that you can use to improve your English skills. So let's see what it's all about. Some of the other articles we'll be looking at is that FAA grounds flights in the U.S. and Southeast Asian eateries are going local. Those are some of the headlines you can look forward to. But first, let's take a look at some vocabulary. All right, for the first article, China stops visas for Japan. I like this one, to play hardball. It's a baseball term. It means to be aggressive or uncompromising in negotiations or competitions. All right. So let's jump into this article. Let's see how China is playing hardball with Japan and South Korea. That's right. China stops visas for Japan, South Korea over COVID rules. Come and check out this article on your own. It's on ingu.com, which is one of the websites that I use quite frequently. So you'll find lots of vocabulary that you can use and read the article yourself. I encourage you, read all your articles out loud because it's going to give your mouth the practice you need to work through and to basically build the muscle memory in your mouth. A lot of people find it's very hard to learn and practice their English because all they do is read or listen. They're not getting the practice with their mouth. That's why they can never remember what the vocabulary and words are, because they never use them with their mouth. All right, so this big story is about China's decision to stop issuing visas for citizens of Japan and South Korea all because of the COVID-19 rules. Now, if you've been hiding under a rock, there have been very large upticks in the COVID. There's been a large uptick in the COVID cases in China recently. And as a result, many countries around the world have stopped allowing Chinese visitors to come in to their countries without previously doing a COVID test. Okay, so you got to do the little COVID test before you leave for your country, like Japan, like Korea, like the United States, like places in Europe. Do a test, and then you do a test when you arrive. Make sure that you're positive, or not positive, excuse me, negative. But in response, China has revoked the visas for citizens from China, from Japan and South Korea. And funny, oddly enough, it's really kind of funny. This is mostly has to do with tourist visas and business visas and all kinds of other visas. It's impossible. You can't even fly through China if you got a layover or a stopover. You can't even do that if you're coming from Japan or South Korea. This is in response. Now China has said that the policy of Japan and South Korea is discriminatory. And so, like I said in the intro, they're kind of playing the race card. It's kind of a strange race card to play because it has nothing to do with race, as politicians from both countries have said. It's not about race. It's not about anything like that. It's about, this terrible virus. And apparently, ever since China has removed their zero COVID policy, it's no longer an issue for them. So why is this story important? Because it highlights the ongoing tensions between China, Japan, and South Korea. It's a reminder of how the pandemic is still affecting the world. And it's also a reminder that there is a larger political game afoot here. Because ask yourself the question, why did they only block Japan and South Korea? Why not all the other countries that put those restrictions on their people? Ask yourself that. That's a very interesting question. Leave a comment down below if you have any ideas or opinions about that. I'd love to hear about it. All right, next up, we're going to go into some technology news. But first, let's talk about some more vocabulary. The next word is another verb. This is an idiom. And the idiom is, oh my goodness, I need to drink some water. The idiom is, this is from, the article is, the FAA grounds all flights. So the idiom that I'm giving you today is to fall through the cracks, to fail to receive the attention or assistance that is needed. When some things get overlooked, they tend to fall through the cracks. So, a lot of parents worry that if their children aren't getting the proper attention, they might fall through the cracks of the education system and they'll be left behind in the education world. So not a good thing. Now, this article comes from one of my favorite little websites. You can actually sign up for their daily email. They'll email it to you, called Morning Brew. They'll send you a daily email with lots of financial news and just interesting headlines. So if you're interested in that, and they're usually very short articles. Now, what happened yesterday morning? The FAA grounded everything. All the flights got just shut down. And why did they do that? Because the sudden failure of the NOTAM system. NOTAM stands for Notice to Air Missions. A fun fact, it used to be called Notice to Airmen. Why do you think they changed it? They didn't change the acronym, but they did change. It's no longer Notice to Airmen, it's Notice to Air Missions. Now, NOTAM system is a critical tool that's used by pilots. It gives them information about flight conditions, such as closed runways, temporary flight restrictions, birds that fly in the air, ice warnings, all kinds of things. And if there's a failure in the system, it can have major implications to flight safety. So because that system went down, they had to shut flights down for several hours until they could figure out how to get the system back up again. Now, why is this story important? Because it highlights the importance of technology in the aviation industry and how it affects the travel industry. Also, it highlights the importance of staying on top of that technology. This stuff is ancient by today's standards. We have smartphones that have more computing power than anything in this NOTAM system. I mean, this thing is like a brick phone, one of the old stuff from the 80s. This stuff is really old, but I have to give it to the FAA. They made sure to include to make sure that they put inclusive language in their policies before they fixed their technology, because God forbid we upset the wrong people. All right. So listen, technology can really affect how people live their lives and how they go about their day-to-day activities. Another reason why this story is important is because it shows just how vulnerable certain systems are. The United States had to shut down all air travel, and enemies of the United States, such as China, might just take advantage of that knowledge. Something to keep in mind. Leave a comment if you have something to say about that particular article. Moving right along, I'm going to jump in with our next vocabulary word: adapt. To adapt to something. Now, this is in reference to the article that we're going to talk about next. Southeast Asian eateries go local to recover from pandemic losses. So to adapt to something means to change or adjust to a new situation or circumstance. So in the story we're going to talk about, the people in Southeast Asia have discovered that they've had to adapt quite a lot. And in a lot of ways, they've had to adapt um, more so than people in first world countries, a big economic countries, um, to the shifting economic environment. So they discovered, let's go check out the article and see just what they discovered. Okay. Oh, well, we're still in the FAA article, so give me just a second to catch up with that. Okay. So this one's from Voice of America Learning English, another great channel for learning English besides Engu.com. South Asian eateries go local to recover from pandemic losses. Now, what's this all about? This article is great. It talks about a lot of the street vendors in Southeast Asia and how they've had to adjust to the pandemic losses in the economy. It's interesting because it highlights the cultural aspect of food mostly and how it's connected to people's day-to-day lives and how they're adapting to the pandemic and to the basically the economic challenges that have come from the pandemic. They just can't get the supplies. They can't get the ingredients for their for certain foods. The supply chain is all out of whack because of the response to the pandemic. So they've had to adapt, and fortunately, in many cases, this is a very positive story. They've learned how to overcome, because hey, let's face it, those folks have had a lot of hard times. This covers all of South Asia. I mean, we're talking India, we're talking Sri Lanka, we're talking all the places that have been devastated over many years, from massive, there was a big tidal wave or tsunami that hit back in, I think it was 2004, I guess. So it shows how people and small businesses are able to recover from the economic impact of the pandemic and how they're innovating to stay afloat. And I encourage you, if you're looking for an upbeat story, that's definitely one to look at. Now, for our last main piece, I'm just going to jump into the last piece with a little bit of vocabulary. The main story tonight is regarding a new defense agreement between Japan and the UK over the increasing Chinese military assertiveness. There's a good word. You might want to check that one out. So the first one I have is to show one's hand. To show one's hand. This is an idiom. It means to reveal one's strategy or intentions. It actually comes from playing cards, poker especially. When you show your hand, you're revealing what cards you have. So we use that as an idiom to talk about um, revealing your strategy. Another one from the cards, from the world of cards, is to up the ante. To up the ante means to increase the level of risk or competition in a situation. So, for example, when runners cross train for certain events, they often will run on sand in order to up the ante when they're training to build their muscles better and faster. All right. And let's go over to our next and final article so we can kind of finish this whole thing up here. Okay. And here we go with a beautiful picture of in London. We've got the Japanese leaders there and the British Prime Minister in Japan. Now, the leaders signed a big agreement in Japan or in the UK. Now, this is a big story. And what's happening here is the United Kingdom and Japan have agreed to a defense pact in order to counter the growing military aggression from China in the region around, Korea and Japan. So this pact will strengthen the defensive ties between the two countries. It including increased military exercises, intelligence sharing, cooperation on defense technology. That's a big deal because Japan has just increased their military spending. They're talking about buying new military equipment from several different countries, not just the United States, not just from the UK. So, why is this story important? It highlights the increasing military assertiveness of China. Okay, we're talking about a lot of aggression from China these days. If you saw my story on Monday, talking about the surprise military exercises, if you haven't seen that, go check that out. And also, it's showing how other countries are responding to that aggression by strengthening their defensive ties, by strengthening their military. It also shows how Japan and the UK are working together to address the issue and how it can impact the entire balance of power in the region. Additionally, the story highlights the ongoing political tensions between China and all the other countries in the region, especially Japan, especially South Korea, especially Taiwan, and how all of this can have a significant impact on international relations and security and the economy. And well, look, folks, I mean, this could be World War III level. That's why it's important. That's why it's important that you stay on top of this news, pay attention to what's happening. As my father always said, because he used to be an aviator in the Navy, keep your head on a swivel. Always be aware of what's going on in the world around you. And excuse me, I've been talking all day. And always try to remember to ask questions. Always, always, always ask questions. So, what's your opinion on China and their increased aggressiveness in the region of Asia, especially around Taiwan? What do you think they're going to do? What's their objective? We talked about China and how they're cutting out visas for Japan and South Korea. Does that have something to do with their larger strategy in the region? That's it's a big question. I'd like to know. I don't know if we're ever going to get an answer from that, but it is very interesting nonetheless. Um, what do you think the impact is going to be of this new defensive pact between Britain and Japan, and on the total balance of power in the region? Do you think it's going to make a difference, or is it just you know blowing smoke? And finally, what's your opinion on the importance of increased cooperation and new alliances in the Pacific region? We've had NATO in Europe for a long time. What do you think? Should there be like a Asian NATO to counter the aggression of China? Leave your opinion, leave your comments down below. Excuse me, my goodness. And pardon my coughing, and that's basically all the time that we have for today. Oh, forgive me. Uh, So this has been English News Worth Talking About. I'm glad you joined me today. Always remember to question everything. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. Hey, thank you for watching. And don't forget your homework. Share this program with a friend and hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be featured in the next video, make sure you leave your answers to one or more of the questions in the comments. And for more news, click over here. And if you want talking tips, click over here. And always remember to stay curious and question everything. Thanks for watching and have a great day.